Hey, Ron, do you smell that?
Yep.
It's time to roast some Packer fans. It's time for garbage time. Guys, welcome into Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Tonight, it is me, Joe, and Ron Seymour running the show. How are you doing tonight, Ron?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Absolutely.
Ready to talk some football.
Oh, me too. I'm in a nice emotional state now that Elijah Moore has been traded from the Jets. Absolutely loved him. But, got to move on. Things are happening. Don't know what to think about it, but we'll get into that.
Sure will.
Yeah. Guys, if you like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show here on YouTube. We are also on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Amazon, iHeartRadio. Tune in audio formats. You can also listen to us live on Twitch and Twitter and leave voicemails at www.garbagetimeff.com. Speaking of voicemails, Ron, we have one tonight. Would you like to listen to it?
Oh, I would love to. I love voicemails.
You arrogantly said, "Bring it on, Christian." And I'm bringing it.
This podcast comes from one of our very loyal listeners from Breathing Fantasy Football, literally, another great podcast, EJ. So let's see what a Packers fan, EJ, has to say to us.
Time Fantasy Football. I just wanted to let you know that I hope you are happy with Aaron Rodgers in New York. You better believe the Packers are going to request an arm and a leg and everything from the Jets. They're going to hold him ransom. He even said he intends to play. I think that is a bunch of hokey pokey. He is going to end up to be forced to retire. So I hope you enjoy the garbage that you're getting from Green Bay. If he intends to play, we'll see what he can do over there. He can't find his head out of his own ass when he's in that darkness retreat. This is a bunch of bullshit. So I hope you enjoy everything you get from him and have a nice day. Breathing Fantasy Football, literally. See ya.
All right, EJ, I can obviously tell on your side of the pond there, too. You're a little bit emotional. I know. You guys may end up trading Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. He's not going to retire. He came onto the McAfee show and said that he wants to play for the Jets. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to be forced into retirement. And he's going to go play for my team. And this leads me to my next point, Ron, which is something we need to get off my chest before we get into the rest of the fantasy podcast. You good with that?
Oh, yeah. I love it.
All right. So I happened to listen to another podcast called The Drew Cave. And he left about a 1 minute short saying how there was 500,000 listeners to the Pat McAfee podcast here on YouTube. And how the Packers need to strike while the iron is hot. And that they're going to absolutely take advantage of the Jets, bend them over a barrel, and take them for 2 first-round picks. So I commented down below there the reasons why that's not going to happen, and he responded back, well, it's kind of nice that you come up with your take 4 days later. Hey, the Drew Cave, I just want you to know that we're also a podcast, and I've had this take for weeks. So now that you do a 1 minute take, here's my 2.5 minute take for you, and I thought it would be appropriate to respond to you this way. So here's the take that I made for you earlier. Hope you enjoy. Hey, what's going on in the Drew Cave? I'm a big fan of your podcast, and as a fellow podcaster, I just wanted to lay out your slightly delusional take. And while I respect your take because you're a passionate Packers fan, let me give you the reasons why that take is wrong. So in your podcast, you claim that the Packers absolutely have to strike iron while it's hot and take the Jets for absolutely everything they have. And that's because there was over 500,000 Pat McAfee show watchers, and for the fact that a lot of them are probably Jets fans, the pressure is going to absolutely be on the Jets to go out and get Aaron Rodgers. Well, first off, that's a little bit delusional. For one, you're dealing with Joe Douglas, who is not going to give up 2 first-round picks for a 39-year-old quarterback. What team is going to do that with a $60 million cap hit? Second off here, he got 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams. He turned Chris Herndon into a 4th-round pick and Sam Darnold into a 2nd and 4th-round pick. You're not talking to a GM that's going to just panic move here and move 2 first-round picks for him. Second off, Albert Breer talked to 4 GMs, one of them being Mike Tannenbaum, a former GM who actually traded for Aaron Rodgers and got him for a conditional 4th-round pick, and none of them would give up anything more than a conditional 2nd-round pick. So the best that you're going to get for him is a 2nd-round pick this year. Now that you've seen the Elijah Moore trade, that's probably going to be your pick. You may get Corey Davis, and you may end up getting a conditional pick next year, maybe a 3rd that could become a 1st, but you're not going to get the 1st-round pick this year. On top of that, how awkward would it be if he ends up showing up to training camp and then he ends up getting injured and then the Packers are stuck with that $1 million salary cap hit? It's absolutely not going to happen. There's absolutely no way that the Packers are going to come away with him during training camp, and he's not going to sit on the bench as your backup while Jordan Love starts. It's an absolute shit fest ready to happen. There's just no way that this is going to end up happening for you. So the best you're going to get is Corey Davis, a 2nd-round pick, and a conditional 3rd-round pick. And let me just remind you, we're going to be absolutely incredible this year because we beat 2 guys with Zach Wilson last year. So just wanted to point that out there. This is my passionate Jets take. Hope you don't take too much away from it, but you're not going to have a $60 million quarterback on your roster come the summer. That trade is going to happen before the draft. So that take is delusional.
Don't hold back, Joe. Tell us how you really feel.
What's your thoughts on that, Ron?
Oh, I mean, do I think it's outside of the realm that they could get 1 first-rounder for him? No. But I do think it'll be more something like 2 seconds, maybe 1 this year, conditional 1 next year, something along those lines. The condition will probably be if they make the playoffs, which I think with Aaron Rodgers, they definitely will. I mean, they almost made it last year with the hodgepodge of quarterback that they had rolling last year. So I don't see why there'd be any reason if they had Aaron Rodgers why they wouldn't make the playoffs. So I lean more towards the 2 seconds.
How do I lay it out any more better in that video? Ryan Gutekunst came out while Rodgers was in his.
What's that name?
Yeah, that's a GM's name. Ryan Gutekunst came out while Rodgers was in the darkness retreat and said in past tense that they're moving on from him. So where is this supposed leverage for Aaron Rodgers that they supposedly have? On top of that, you want stuff for your quarterback before the draft. You want stuff to help him this year. So why would you drag it out and have him going into the summer? Why would they offer a first-round pick? It makes absolutely no sense. And on top of that, if he goes to minicamp, training camp, and gets hurt at all, they're on the freaking hook for $60 million of his total contract. They're screwed. Their salary cap's ruined. It's going to happen before the draft. And to think otherwise, Packers fans are absolutely delusional. So I'm sick of them coming at us saying that they're going to come away and just bend us over the barrel. It's not going to freaking happen.
I mean, it's unlikely, but I mean, it all depends on how desperate they are. Joe Douglas to this point has been a masterclass when it comes to trading until the trade that literally happened today, which, I mean,
true.
But like you said, it could have been, he got that 2nd-round pick to use that as ammo to get Aaron Rodgers. Maybe the Packers wanted 2 firsts this year or 2 seconds this year instead of a 2nd this year and a 2nd next year. So that's what this trade was for. I mean, who knows what actually is going on, but I agree with you. I highly doubt there's any chance Aaron Rodgers is on the Packers this season.
Yeah, so the Packers fans will be doing this. Yeah, it's just bound to happen. And with that, Ron, you ready to get into the news?
Oh, yeah.
News updates.
All right, so that take that I had for that podcast leads into our next little bit of news, and that's what happened today with the Jets. They were obviously the top story around the NFL with the 2 moves that they made. One was them earlier in the day signing McCole Hardman to a $6 million contract, which was interesting. I think they're going to plan on using him as a punt returner, and I think he's going to eventually end up being their 4th wide receiver, so not very valuable for fantasy football. But I thought they were going to settle right here, and this was going to be the wide receiving core going into the upcoming season. Then an hour and a half later, all hell hits the wall for me, on the emotional roller coaster, which is they trade Elijah Moore and a third-round pick to move up to 43 and get the second-round pick here. One, I understand that he wanted to be traded, and he may make noise in the locker room if he doesn't end up getting the ball, and there's a lot of mouths to feed here. Two, I understand they don't want to trade that first-round pick this year, and if they acquire a second-round pick, that's probably going to the Packers. That's really what I see happening here. But it gives them a little bit of flexibility, too. So, like I said, I'm kind of split on this. One, they could go after DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that's very likely. They could look at someone like Jerry Jeudy, but I think his value is too high. So I think the most likely scenario here is that Elijah Moore and that package gets them the Aaron Rodgers trade, which I think could happen at any point now. It could happen tonight. It could drop in a minute. It could happen tomorrow. And I think it's going to happen very quickly. And what it ultimately is going to end up leading to is Odell Beckham coming to the New York Jets. There's been some hints to it on Twitter. He's been tweeting some New England Patriots players saying, who the hell would want to play for the Patriots? I'm not playing for $4 million, but it's kind of interesting that I might be playing for you against you guys 2 times next year. So, Ron, with all of that, what's your thoughts on McCole Hardman, the potential of Odell Beckham playing for the Jets, Elijah Moore getting traded for that value, and the fantasy value that he would have with Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, like I said with Elijah Moore in our group text, like, I don't think you were going to get much more for him. Sucks that you had to use a third also to get it.
Yep.
But, you know, he was a cancer in the locker room last year. He didn't perform statistically on the field. Yes, he may have looked better than his stats actually showed, but you have no leverage if he's not having stats. You know what I mean? Like,
I would disagree with that because I think LaFleur and the way he managed the games showed out why he was so shitty. And on top of that, statistically, you could show and you could watch the film that he was getting good separation last year. Zach Wilson was throwing him the ball, which was absolute dog shit. He had a good rookie season. Typically, you see the sophomore slump. I think he had good value. It's just
that's not how they're going to look at it, though. That's not how any team would look at it. They're going to be like, if you're going for someone, you're not going to be like, oh, look at all the stats he could have had. Because just because he's open doesn't mean he's going to catch the ball. Like,
well, how do we turn Chris Herndon into a 4th-round pick? Teams look on potential, too.
I understand, like, yeah, but 4th-round picks are not as valuable as 2nd-round picks. I mean, 1st-rounders obviously are their own thing, but, like, especially if they're earlier 2nd-rounders, those are still very valuable picks. You could still get starter-level talent in those rounds. Like, you can get starters in the 4th round, but they're very, a lot fewer and farther between. You have to be, your scouts have to be real good, recognizing exactly who's going to fit for your scheme. Where those early seconds, those are like, honestly, I consider the first 10 to 12 picks of the 2nd round still the 1st round because you're still getting very good talent in that range. So, and that's the pick they got. They got a top 12 in the 1st or 2nd round. So I think the value you guys got for him, if you could have done it without giving up the 3rd, would have been really good, I think.
I would have been very happy with it.
Yeah, but giving up the 3rd kind of knocks it down a little bit, but your coaching regime is the same, so he's still going to have the same problems. Like you said, there's a lot of mouths to feed. Why not capitalize? Yes, I know you got a new offensive coordinator, but that doesn't matter.
And a new quarterback that's 3 times as good.
It doesn't matter. It's still Robert Saleh. You still have your head coach, and he's going to have a problem with it. So you capitalized on someone who was causing problems in your locker room, who didn't perform last year. I know all the things, but you got a early 2nd rounder for him. I would call it a win. Yeah, it's got to be a win.
All right, now do you think that ends up leading to Odell Beckham ending up on this roster?
I don't think Odell Beckham ends up on this roster.
Where does he go then?
I'm still undecided, but I don't think it's the Jets. I don't think it's the Giants. He might wait till after the draft and then see which one of these teams that really needed a wide receiver that didn't quite get one, in the 1st round, maybe the first 2 rounds, like they didn't get the guy they were really hoping for. And then you might see someone be like, all right, we really need to shore up this position now. Now we'll bring in Odell, give him more money than we were previously offering. he'll probably wait till after the draft when teams are a little bit more worried about their receiver room.
I'm pretty damn sure he's coming. Here's a few reasons why. One, I already alluded to the fact that he was on Aaron Rodgers' list and he wants to play with him. I guess they're actually pretty close buddies and he's always wanted to play with him. Two, the Twitter back and forth that we saw between him and New England player. It was a defensive player. And three, on top of that, he said he didn't need $20 million. He said $4 million's not enough, but I don't need $20 million. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a lot of things going on here that show that he wants to come to the Jets. And on top of that, there's another report from Rich Shamidi, who's one of our beat reporters, that the Jets are very interested in him. They're keeping close contact. The Cowboys are not in contact with him anymore. They traded for Brandon Cooks. I think there's a limited amount of teams he'd go and play for, and I think competing for a Super Bowl is something he wants to do. And with Elijah Moore moving on, that spot is now open for him to come play with his supposed buddy. And there's smoke here. I think it's very likely to happen, actually.
I just think with the money they just paid Lazard, they already have Garrett Wilson. And everybody knows Odell Beckham's going to bitch if he's not getting the ball.
Oh, absolutely.
So why would they're not going to get rid of one locker room cancer to bring in another one?
Although he played very well with the Rams and was a team player when they were winning. So
because
maybe
he was
Odell has grown up a little bit.
He got the ball a lot when he was the number 2. He was not going to. Yes, he'd be the number 2, but Rodgers loves Lazard. Rodgers is going to love Garrett Wilson's talent. Like, he's
going to be a good enough of a trooper, I think, to make.
I just don't.
That's why I think he's going to do it. I'm not saying they couldn't blow up in our face.
To get on your Twitter thing. To get on your Twitter thing, he also tweeted Von Miller the same type of shit. He also tweeted with Saquon Barkley saying, "Have your GM call me." Like, he's been tweeting everybody. Like, I take nothing to his tweets because he's been tweeting everybody about going there. So him talking shit to a Patriots player doesn't mean shit to me. It means he's Odell Beckham.
Good.
He's Odell Beckham and he's gonna talk shit. Like, that's what it means to me.
He won me over with that tweet. I want him.
Well, of course he did, because anyone that bashes the Patriots in any way, shape, or form has won you over.
They're a Jet.
And you're Joe, so you want every free agent ever on your team.
I didn't necessarily want Mecole Hardman. He's fast. He's a good punt returner, but I think it's kind of a little bit of a waste of money.
Yeah, more money that they're not going to spend on Odell Beckham.
All right. You ready to move on to the free agency moves that we missed last week that actually happened a lot more prevalently in the second half of free agency? Yeah. We can actually have a little bit of an advantage for fantasy football?
Yeah.
All right, so first one I wanted to talk to you about, and it's actually the title of this episode, is 2 running backs specifically got jobs. That's one, Rashaad Penny to the Eagles, and their former running back, Miles Sanders, moved on to the Panthers. He seems to think that they're going to compete this year. So I want you to break down these 2 running back positions for me, and then tell me who you think is actually going to be the better fantasy running back this year for their team.
Rashaad Penny is a phenomenal running back. He's a big bruising back, and they're really going to love him in Philadelphia for the 3 games he plays before he gets injured and loses his whole season.
Top 5 those 3 games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's going to be phenomenal those 3 games. I mean, just phenomenal. If he could put the whole season together, he'd be great there. But I think Miles Sanders in Carolina, and here comes one of the downsides of doing a podcast with people you play fantasy football with. I am 1,010% all in on Miles Sanders this year.
Is he on your roster, Ron Seymour?
He is not. I actually traded him away last year.
And maybe trying to acquire him again this year? But
I got a first rounder for him, so I'm okay with it.
Sounds like that first rounder might be going back.
I've thought about it. I'm not going to lie, but I don't know if it would work. I have a draft plan in mind, so. But I think Miles Sanders is going to be phenomenal in a team that's going to want to run the ball. And we've seen them run the ball very efficiently last year with Donta Foreman. And I know they're slightly different backs, but I think Miles Sanders is a better back than Donta Foreman. So, I mean, he's definitely in line for a huge chunk of yardage. Touchdowns could be a little on the low side, seeing how I don't think the Panthers are going to have a super explosive offense. But if he could get to 6 to 8 touchdowns, you're looking at a high-end RB2 on the low side, I think.
Thielen definitely helps that, I think, immensely.
Well, the quarterback is the problem.
We'll
We'll
see
see what CJ Stroud can do.
That's kind of feeling like that way. That's who they may end up drafting. And when Josh McCown goes out to you and says, yeah, we can go shopping for houses together, where are you going to move when you come down to Charlotte?
Yeah. Maybe we can get a pickup game going when you live in Carolina.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting take. All right, we already mentioned him too. So what's your thoughts on Adam Thielen going to the Panthers too? Another piece that they added.
I don't know. He's 32 and a half years old. He's been very touchdown dependent over the past 2 years, really. I know 2 years ago he had a monster fantasy season, was really good for fantasy, but it was on the back of 12 or 13 touchdowns, some ridiculous number. He can't get separation from single coverage. All last year, he just couldn't do it.
A little long in the tooth.
Yeah, he's older, great red zone threat. Again, the problem is, don't know how often the team is going to be in the red zone.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if Thielen finishes with 800 yards and 5 TDs, which okay, but it's not a huge fantasy asset. You're going to have bad weeks.
Do you think they're done looking at wide receivers, or do you think they're going to sign another one?
No.
Maybe a DJ Chark?
I mean, DJ Chark would be nice, I think. If they get a quarterback that Beckham likes, Beckham could go there.
That's potential.
You know what I mean? If Beckham thinks that they have something that they could put together, and they're in the NFC South, that division is a hot mess.
And their defense is pretty damn good. Very underrated.
They were in line to win the division through much of last season. They were right neck and neck, and now with Tampa losing Tom Brady, that division's wide open.
All right. We already mentioned his name too, D'Onta Foreman. So he, I believe, went to the Chicago Bears, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
So David Montgomery has left that team now. So what is your thoughts on that backfield there for the Chicago Bears? Has he got any fantasy value, or is that going to go to the other running backs on that team?
I'm interested to see what they do in the draft. I don't feel like they're done. I feel like
what running back do you think they might be looking at?
I'm thinking a day two, or day two, maybe a second rounder, depending on how first round falls for him, But if they added someone like Zach Charbonnet, maybe in the second round, third round, maybe if he falls there, I think someone of that caliber could edge D'Onta Foreman out throughout the season. But I do think it's going to be a 1-2 punch, much like it was last year. Have Khalil Herbert.
I think he's obviously the number one in that backfield to start.
Yeah, but I still think he's going to be, he'll be the passing down. Not saying that he can't run through between tackles, but I think they want someone else for that and him to be the change of pace guy.
All right. We already talked about David Montgomery here. This is going to break JJ's heart, but he has now moved on to the Detroit Lions. So what is his fantasy value going forward? And what do we think about the other running backs on that roster?
I think David Montgomery's floor is mid to low RB2, but the ceiling is low end RB1. Right now, the only other running back of note on that roster is DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
Which, phenomenal running back, but again, has trouble staying on the field. And
do you see David Montgomery overtaking him, or do you see him being a compliment?
I see David Montgomery being the early down work, goal line most likely, and DeAndre Swift being the explosive pass catcher. But I don't see DeAndre Swift playing the whole year.
Yeah, and he's had some trouble doing that.
And I don't know how much patience the coaching staff for the Lions has left with him. He looks good when he's out there playing and everything, but I just don't. They didn't spend a lot of money on Montgomery. What was it, 3 years, $18 million, $6 million a year, something like that?
About what a running back would get on their second contract. Yep.
It's not a lot,
No.
but like they made it a priority. They didn't just bring Jamal Williams back. They brought someone in that's also like Jamal Williams was great between the tackles, great in the red zone. Not much for the pass catching though. Montgomery can do it all.
Adam from the Hackling Fandom says, "What is up, fandom?" Welcome into the show tonight, Adam. Do you have any questions for your fantasy teams or maybe Dynasty if you're looking to get into that summer? Drop them down right in the comments for us. And if you didn't catch my little rant earlier to the Drew Cave, which is another podcast, a Packers one, which JJ's going to get a kick out of if he's not listening to the show now, go back and listen to that. Probably quite entertaining. I think Ron enjoyed it.
But yeah, David Montgomery could potentially have. I'm going to wait and see what his ADP is.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm projecting it probably be somewhere 4th, 5th round, just because people are going to be still high on DeAndre Swift. He is the more electric player. Like if it was shot for shot, who's the better running back? I'd probably have to give the edge to DeAndre Swift, but it wouldn't be by much. And David Montgomery is, through career been healthier than DeAndre Swift.
Him being the veteran, I tend to think that he's going to be the complement to start the season, but I think DeAndre Swift is going to give way to him. So I think Montgomery is going to be the more prevalent fantasy player as the season goes on. And I think he's definitely more durable, as you stated there too. So I like Montgomery a little bit more. I think the higher upside is Swift, but he may not stay healthy. And that's always been the problem with Smith. So Swift. So let's move on from that. Another running back that left their roster and is now playing for the Saints, Jamal Williams. So what is your thoughts about him on the Saints roster?
I think for the first 4 weeks when Kamara is going to be suspended, he's going to be real good.
I agree with that.
And, then it's going to come down to, well, one, how long is Kamara suspended? And then how do they plan on using these guys? Like Jamal Williams, had a crap ton of touchdowns last year. Is he going to do that with the Saints?
He may be their red zone target.
He might be their red zone guy. That might be the whole reason they brought him in. But he's going to be very touchdown dependent, and that's hard to, trust.
Later in the season, but it gives you a nice floor with him because he was so consistent last offseason. I don't think you're going to see him be like the Cordell Patterson where he's just going to drop right off after 1 year. That's not going to be what's going to happen to Jamal Williams. I think he still has a nice bottom floor where you're going to get a nice good 4 weeks for him, and then he'll be a consistent fantasy player as a low-end RB2.
He might finish as a low-end RB2 at the year, but I think you're going to get plenty of weeks where he's low RB3.
For where you're drafting him, though, I think you're going to get pretty good value for him. I don't think you're going to be drafting him early.
You might have to.
I don't think that's going to happen.
If Kamara gets suspended for 4 games, you're going to be drafting him probably 3rd, 4th round.
Okay.
And if it's 6 games, it's definitely going to be 3rd round at least. Because people are going to in those first 4-6 weeks, he could be great for fantasy football because he's going to be like the only guy there.
I tend to think he will be.
But I don't know. It's hard to trust. I mean, it could be one of those things where you get him, he performs really well, and then you trade him away and try to get someone with a little more thing. But, this is all dependent on how many games Kamara misses.
Okay, let's talk about another running back. This running back we talked about last week and you made an apology bet for, so you should be reading that tonight, but
nope,
our Marshmallow Man says he did not lose
I haven't lost. Did I lose the bet yet?
I think you did.
No. What was the parameters of the bet?
Ron says the parameters of the bet is that Ezekiel Elliott will not be on the Cowboys roster for week 1, which wording-wise, he's correct. The problem is he's not going to return to them. I already wrote the apology out for Ron because ultimately there's no fucking way he's coming back to the Cowboys.
That's not true. So it's not 0%.
Oh, it's 0%. You're going to be reading that within the next 2 weeks. So
Maybe.
get that
No,
reading voice
because
ready.
I will not, unless he signs with someone else, I will not read it until week 1.
Yeah, well, guess what? He's going to be on a roster within the next few weeks, and it's going to be a cheap contract.
What
for
roster?
A contender. Chargers.
You think they're getting rid of Eckler?
I think they'll trade him. I do. Whether he's efficient or not, that's a different question. But that's what I wanted to ask you. And I think I already know your answer. With him being cut off the Cowboys roster, me being right about that, of course, where's it going to end up? Is it going to be the Cowboys or is it going to be somewhere else?
I mean, I fully do believe that there's a chance that he tests out the waters and no one really pays him what he wants.
Not test out the waters. He's forced to test out the waters.
Well, you know what I mean, though. Like, he could go through all of this and not really get what he wants and then just go back to the Cowboys and just take a little cheapy deal to just stay there. Like, I know it's, on the lower end of probability.
Very low on the end of probability.
It's not outside the realm. I mean, we've seen this type of stuff happen before where a player costs way too much money. They get cut to save it. They try to find something better. It doesn't work. And then they just go back to the team that cut them on a better deal. I mean, not wrong. It's happened before.
Yeah, not in this case, though, because they've already given him his goodbye. They already told all their fans how much they admire him. They already made the trade for Brandon Cooks. They have moved on. Ezekiel Elliott is
What does Brandon Cooks have to do with Zeke Elliott?
They made their move to codify their fans, which is give a weapon on the offense to make the Cowboys fans happy, which is what they did.
Cowboys fans are never happy.
They're a little bit more happy now that Zeke's been cut and they've made that trade. This is just to bring the babies back to the team. Okay.
I don't think that any of those moves made them any happier. Do you see the plays that they're running in the playoffs? They're not happy at all.
What we can take from this is, one, Zeke's fantasy value absolutely tanks now that he's been cut. He may be a complimentary piece. You seem to think he was still good, even though I said with the yards per carry he is not good. That reason they were going to cut him. And you're going to be reading an apology about him in the next
I just said he wasn't
somewhere.
nearly as bad as people are like making it out to be. People are acting like his yards per carry tanked to like 2.5 and he wasn't like only had like 300 yards rushing. The man had almost 900 yards rushing, 3.8 a carry and like 8 or 9 touchdowns. Like he wasn't as bad as people say he was.
Did you read the apology, Bet?
I haven't even read it yet. No.
Well, I hope you look forward to reading it next week.
Maybe I won't be reading it at all.
Yeah, I doubt that.
How, like, can I just ask you, like, say in a couple weeks, like he still hasn't signed anywhere. It's after, let's say a month, right after the draft. Cowboys didn't land anybody that they wanted in the draft. He still hasn't signed anywhere, and they bring him back to the Cowboys. Like,
I'll let you write an apology for me if that happens.
I would anyways, because that was the apology bet. Like if he was on the Cowboys week 1.
Yes, but you don't even give to the spirit of the parameters and give the entertainment to the heckling fandom to read your apology bet. Yeah, you should be doing.
I am 1,000%.
Instead, you decide to weasel your way out of it and lawyer up here and go, "Oh, it might turn to my because he's not doing it in week 1, just because he's unemployed. You lost the bet already and don't want to read it, so you just want to wait until he's on another roster."
Just because you spend all day in a courtroom and you were able to get lawyered by a paper maker, don't get all mad at me.
Why? Because you don't agree to the parameters on a deal. It's just got a little caveat?
No. The parameters were, listen, you can go back and listen. I said, what are the parameters? And you said, you said, what are the parameters? I said that he will be on the Cowboys roster week 1. There was nothing about him getting released. There was none of that. It was just he will be on the Cowboys roster week 1. So I haven't lost yet.
When you get your apology bet, you're going to be reading it in the solo layout.
Oh, okay. Deal.
Just so I hope you know.
Get my face off there. Holy shit, what'd you do? You picked the wrong one.
All right, let's move on now that I've said my piece about that. Anyway, what is his fantasy value, regardless of team then? For the
low end RB2 is probably ceiling.
Okay. And what is Tony Pollard's fantasy impact?
As of right now, it's high RB 2, low end RB1. I wouldn't
go as high as 1.
I don't think they're going to give him the full workload like a lot of people think they're going to do. I don't think he can handle it.
No, they never do, and I think they'll put him on a pitch count.
And I don't think Ronald Jones is the answer that the Cowboys are going to be looking for.
They signed Dearness Johnson in the last few days. I think he may be a little bit of a better answer, but I think they may end up drafting someone. If they don't draft anyone, I think Dearness Johnson's the answer. But a mid-round running back or someone from Texas could help them out. So
that honestly, I think about that. Like if Bijan falls to them wherever they're picking 20-something.
It probably is going to happen.
It could. I've been trying to think. I got to write out the list of draft order and start putting pen to paper of who I think is going where. But
I mean, come on. The owner of the Cowboys loves to start him. The big names. He's from Texas. I don't see any way he'd draft him. If he falls that far, he's a Cowboy. But I don't know if he's going to fall that far.
Yeah, it'll be close.
Yeah.
I think it'll be right on the hair.
Another Cowboy, Dalton Schultz, signed with another Texas team, the Texans. What's his fantasy value?
Low.
Really?
Yeah, who's gonna be throwing the ball? Bryce Young?
I mean, maybe, but might be the rookie's best friend.
No, I'm not gonna trust the weapons of the Texans.
I'm gonna say he ends up still as a top 6 tight end on the year, even with the Texans.
No.
He's talented. He's very talented.
I don't care how talented he is. He's a volume guy.
I'll get him at a nice value in the fantasy drafts this year then.
Kelsey, Waller, Andrews, Hawkinson,
maybe Kyle Pitts, maybe.
Kyle Pitts.
Maybe.
I think he has a better year than Schultz.
And then Schultz 6.
No, not Schultz 6. George Kittle 6.
If he's not hurt all year.
No, there's no way Schultz finishes top 6.
I think
he is a volume play. Always has been. He's not super athletic. He's not breaking big long runs. He's strictly volume. He'd have to get 80 receptions on the year easy to get up there. And I don't think he does it.
All right, I'm putting you on the floor. Talk about Darren Waller to the Giants.
Oh, I like Darren Waller to the Giants. He's easily our best receiving weapon we have on the team. Still think we could grab someone else in the draft. I don't think it's guaranteed, though. But, I mean, he's athletic. He's big. And I think it'll actually help our offense because people will have to focus on him a little bit, which will kind of free up Slayton a little bit more and Hodgins and Wandale when he comes back. So I think it's a good move. He could be a 100 target type of season.
Among tight ends, where does he finish?
God. Definitely top 10.
Come on. Obviously.
I'm trying to figure out. I could see him in the top 5. I don't know if I'd. God, it'd be hard to edge out. But if he stays healthy and the amount of work I think he's going to have to get, it's hard to see not top 5.
I'm going to say currently 4 minus an injury. He was banged up last year and he has a propensity to get hurt.
Yeah.
Which he's on the Giants. Let's get real. He's probably going to get hurt then.
They're getting new turf this year.
Yeah, I like that. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about Brandon Cooks a little bit here, though, too. He didn't go for a lot of draft capital, but he's now on the Cowboys. So I'm going to ask you this question. Could the Cowboys potentially have 2 1,000-yard wide receivers, one of them being Brandon Cooks this year?
I don't think so. I mean, Mike McCarthy has already come out and said he wants to run the ball more. The offensive coordinator they brought in is one that likes to run the ball. I'm not saying that, like, these guys aren't going to be super good, but, like, I don't think you see the passing numbers like you saw last year.
No.
I don't, because they want to run the ball more. Like, the whole reason they got rid of Kellen Moore is because, Kellen Moore just wants to light up the scoreboard. Like, so now they're talking about running the ball, draining the clock, playing defense, and then using Dak and these receivers when they have to.
Everyone, every single year, doubts Brandon Cooks. Yet consecutively, he has a 1,000-yard season every freaking year.
Except last year.
Except last year. The Texans really sucked. Look for him to get back on that path, and I think he's going to have 1,000 yards again. But I also think
but here's the problem.
CeeDee Lamb will do that on the other end.
Here's the problem. Brandon Cooks has never had a CeeDee Lamb type talent across from him on any of those teams. He was always the guy.
I believe this offense can have 2 wide receivers with over 1,000 yards. I think CeeDee Lamb
I think it could. I just don't
think it will happen. I think he'll be a great value in fantasy drafts. People always doubt him, and he's in a good offense.
I think Prescott throws for maybe 4,200 yards.
Okay.
And I think CeeDee Lamb has 1,300 of those. Then you got to put in, tight ends, other wide receivers, all the running backs.
The tight end weapon is gone. The other wide receivers aren't nearly as talented.
They have Brevin Jordan and another young tight end that they drafted. That's the whole reason they were willing to get rid of Schultz. There's 2 young tight ends on that team that are more athletic than Schultz was.
If they're going to play the way you think that they're going to and run the ball more, those tight ends are going to be in there to block more often. So
yeah,
they're not going to look to
pass
into those tight ends. And while Brevin Jordan is pretty good, Brandon Cooks as a pure catcher is better.
Right, but that doesn't mean that. Yeah, the wide receivers are going to be blocking on run plays too. Your argument doesn't make any sense.
On those option plays, the tight ends are not going to be out in routes. They're going to be blocking in the pockets, I think is what's going to happen.
On pass plays, they're going to be out there catching balls.
And
you think
Prescott's going to have a propensity to throw to the more talented players, which will be the pass catchers, which is Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb.
And don't forget about Michael Gallup.
Right, another wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. Tony Pollard.
Running back.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. And the tight ends are going to catch balls.
Not as many as you think, I don't think.
Between the tight ends,
yep.
If they have a total of 500 yards,
yep.
That's 500 yards that Brandon Cooks can't get.
Who says they're going to have 500 yards?
You're acting like there's just going to be a plethora of yards to go around. Did you know that every year?
I just think they're going to be hyper-focused on these 2.
Do you know how rare it is for two players on the same team to have 1,000 yards?
It's going to happen with these 2.
It's not.
Okay. I love just getting you revved up. You ready to move on?
Yes.
All right. Allen Lazard is now a New York Jet. Aaron Rodgers is going to be throwing him around. We've already hammered the Jets a lot, so I just want to get his fantasy impact, specifically him. You can take into other accounts the wide receivers. I've already hammered at home with this. What do you think Allen Lazard is going to do for fantasy this year?
Did you know that he's never had a 1,000-yard season?
I do. He's prominently a red zone target.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I'm scared.
Wide receiver 3?
Yeah.
That's the feeling I'm getting with him, too.
That's where I'd be comfortable taking him in drafts as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I'm thinking he may have some big weeks early while Rodgers is comfortable with his other wide
receivers.
But
if you're right and Beckham does go there, I will have 0 shares of Allen Lazard. 0.
That's fair.
Because Garrett Wilson and Odell Beckham are very much the better wide receivers than Allen Lazard.
Yes, that's very true. So this might be a little bit of an under-the-radar signing, and I wanted to bring it up to you because he's on the Giants, Paris Campbell. Do you think he's going to be in 3 wide receiver sets, and do you think he could actually be very under the radar and actually be a very good value for fantasy?
I don't know. I think they gave him something like what? $4 or $5 million a year? Something along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he is already working with Darius Slayton, and Daniel Jones is supposed to be getting with him so they can all work out together and shit, which is good to hear. A lot of people really like Paris Campbell's talent, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field long enough to really show it.
The fantasy world absolutely loves Paris Campbell.
Yeah.
And they put him up on this pedestal, and he disappoints every single year.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. He scares me. You're going to have Hodgins. Hodgins is going to be our one, I think.
He's Decent.
as far as wide receivers go, and then
Well, I think he'll draft someone.
right, but we'll see.
Maybe certain running back from Ohio State that ran a 4.5.
We're not drafting a running back, not early at least.
Wide receiver.
You ran Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Yes.
He's not going to be there when we pick.
So no chance.
Unless we trade up, which if we trade up for Jackson Smith-Njigba, I wouldn't be too upset.
You heard it here, folks. Ron Seymour says Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be a Giant.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the Raiders. So Jakobi Meyers signed there. So my question is with you. You just said, so obviously I think I already know your answer. Does he have any possession impact like he did with the New England Patriots with Josh McDaniels there, even with Devontae Adams on the roster and Jimmy G throwing the ball?
Wide receiver 3.
That's about what I think too. What about their tight end, O.J. Howard, who is going to be replacing?
He's interesting. He's interesting.
He is.
If I can get him really late in drafts, I would definitely take a shot on O.J. Howard.
Like, you're talking like last 2 rounds, maybe?
Yeah. Last 4, maybe even. If I'm really punting the position, he's a guy, he's super athletic. Jimmy G loves throwing to the tight end. The defense is going to be worried about Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Jakobi Meyers, so he could be sneaky good.
I think you're right about that. He does interest me a little bit. Last 2 things I want to go over. Your favorite player, Lamar Jackson, does not seem to be getting any offers, although the Indianapolis Colts seem pretty close and ready to potentially give an offer here. Does this interest you in any formats?
I mean, if he's playing football, he's top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Any chance he becomes an Indianapolis Colt?
It's possible. I mean,
how possible though?
30%.
So you think that they could come up with a contract that the Baltimore Ravens potentially would not match, even though Lamar Jackson seems to want to do absolutely nothing with that team?
Depends on the contract. I think they've shown that they're not going to give him a fully guaranteed contract. So if the Colts come up with a fully guaranteed contract and 2 first-round picks, one of them being the 104.
Gut feeling, opening day, fall 2023. Where's Lamar Jackson running out of the tunnel?
On his couch.
Oof. Ow.
I think he sits out.
Sitting out.
I think I'm feeling more and more like it. I'm probably up to about 45% that he's going to be sitting on his couch.
That would be absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Bad for your dynasty team. Have a backup plan, Ron.
Geno Smith.
Oh, great. I'm sure that really excites you.
And potentially 2 rookies.
Oh, yeah. Good thing you have 3 first-round picks in your draft.
Yeah. As of now, we'll see what happens. I got things in the works.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, for certain running backs, I'm sure that you love. Anyway.
Actually, no. None of the things I have in the works are for running backs.
There's one I know. Draft night, one is going to get taken on the second night, and you're going to fall in love. Anyway, let's talk about our last topic of the night, and that is someone that a lot of fans and a lot of teams are looking at, especially Giants and Patriots fans. Let's cover DeAndre Hopkins. It seems like the trade rumors are heating up. They said there's 5 teams that are looking at him currently. The initial thought that he was going to go for a 2nd or 3rd round pick doesn't seem to be true, and they're probably going to have to trade him for later picks, but I think he's going to get moved. So the team that seemed to be out in front earlier in the last few days is the Patriots. So
I just signed a report earlier that
go ahead.
I saw a report earlier that they're out.
Where does he end up then?
I really hope he ends up with the Giants.
Any chance it's the Chiefs? I've been hearing them too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that could be.
What is his fantasy value on 2 teams like the Giants or the Chiefs? Is it significantly different?
If it's the Chiefs, it's going to be top 5.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Without fucking question. It will be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. That man will go in the first 2 rounds, guaranteed.
He may go in the first 2 rounds, but I think he could disappoint. He hasn't been a great fantasy wide receiver the last 2 years. I'm not saying he wouldn't be decent, but first 2 rounds, I don't think he'd be worth it.
He was suspended for the first 6 rounds. I think after those 6, he was a wide receiver 1.
I'm trying to put some doubt on there so I can draft him, Ron.
There's no doubt. Like if he went to the Chiefs,
if he's a cheap, I'm going to throw some shade on it so I can take him in the 3rd or 4th round.
Not going to happen. Just not going to happen. And if he's a Giant, low end wide receiver 1, I think.
Okay, yeah, he'd be good anywhere he went, though. He's DeAndre Hopkins. I still believe in him. There is one more thing I missed, too. I believe Devin Singletary did sign with a team. Where was that?
The Texans.
Does this do anything to the running back?
It hurts Dameon Pierce's value immensely.
How much?
Immensely.
Is immensely like losing most of his workload? Is it going to be a split? Lose a starting job?
At best, it's going to be a 50-50 split.
So do you think they both have fantasy value?
No, I think neither one of them have fantasy value. It's the Texans.
So you're saying they need to fix that offensive line?
It's the Texans. They need to fix a lot.
I think he's going to be a complimentary piece. I think Dameon Pierce, without an unbiased opinion here, because he's on my roster, is going to be low-end running back too.
Dameon Pierce has no ties to this regime. This coaching staff, this regime, just went out and paid money for Devin Singletary.
They had a lot of money to spend.
Right, but they're not going to spend money on players if they really like the players they have.
Maybe.
Okay.
All right, guys. If you like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show here on YouTube. We are also in audio formats on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Amazon, iHeartRadio. Tune in. We are on live on Twitch and Twitter. You can visit us and leave us voicemails as EJ did at www.garbagetimef.com. Go over and watch his podcast, Breathing Fantasy Football. Literally, he's actually live at 9 o'clock. So go over in 3 minutes and go watch his.
Fact.
That absolutely is a fact. He's on at 9 o'clock. And the Drew Cave, yes, I slap back at your comment, but feel free to slap back at ours. We're a friendly podcast, friendly competition. So if you want to shit on my take, feel free. I'd actually would love the banter back and forth. Or if you ever want to come on the podcast and give your takes, that'd be great. Because if we do trade him for a first-round pick, I have to eat crow, and that's good for our podcast.
Joe loves crow.
You're going to be eating crow on Ezekiel Elliott here in a week.
Not till week 1.
No, if he signs on another team, you will be reading that apology in a week or 2. So there's that.
This is a good time. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, because the minute I see that, Ron's going to be getting that message. He'll be reading it on the next week's podcast. And then the ghost of Ron Seymour will return and not be on the show for 4 weeks.
Oh, no. Ryan's fast approaching the ghost of this podcast.
All right, guys. Have a great night. Join the Heckling Fandom, www.garbagetimef.com. Let's go, Jets.